This week on the 302, we head out to Hagley Museum and Library to check out the annual craft fair and tell you what's new this year. Grab your wallet, the 302 is doing some early Christmas shopping. Hey 302, it seems like there are so many things that have been canceled because of COVID, but one thing that is not going to be canceled is the Hagley Craft Fair. We're here at Hagley Museum and Library to talk all about it with Hagley's marketing manager, Laura Jury. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk a little bit about what's different this year.
Sure. So people really look forward to the annual Hagley Craft Fair. It's been going on since 1978. And this year we've worked with the state of Delaware and the Division of Public Health so we can still hold it in a safe manner for our vendors and also attendees. So this year the craft fair is going to be exclusively outdoor. Typically we are in and around some of our buildings like our Hagley Library and the Soda House, but this year it will be held outdoor to keep everyone safe. We're also requiring masks, so everyone has to wear a mask, vendors and attendees at all times unless you're eating or drinking. And we've reduced the event from a 2-day event to a 1-day event, and time tickets are required.
Now you mentioned that this started back in 1978, and when it started it was just textiles, but it's so much more now.
Right, when people come to the Hagley Craft Fair, they can interact with over 50 vendors who specialize in woodwork and pottery, ceramics, jewelry, and we even have a specialty food market. So there's something for everyone at the craft fair.
So it's really the kind of thing where you could get a head start on your Christmas list, right?
Absolutely. It's a great way to support local. All of our artists come from here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and you can find that really special gift for someone this holiday season.
Now, I mentioned when we started that so many things have been canceled because of COVID, and you mentioned that Hagley has gone through all of the precautions that are necessary to keep folks safe while they're having a good time. But talk to me a little bit about, just the drive to make sure that this event stays connected to the community.
Right. Well, we've really worked to have a good variety of different artists here. Our event workers have people who return year after year, as well as some new vendors for this year. One of the people we'll be talking today is a first-time vendor at the Hagley Craft Fair. And again, just trying to keep everyone safe with these modifications so that we're still able to have the craft fair, and something that some people look forward to each year.
Now, if someone can't make it for whatever reason, maybe they're not ready to venture out, this is something, as you mentioned, started in '78, it happens every year, and will happen again next year.
That's right. So this is a perennial event, and people can look for it the third weekend in October. Typically it is a 2-day event held Saturday and Sunday. This year, again, we made the modification that it is October 17th only. So if you can't make it out for 2020, try to come again for next year in 2021.
We'll certainly keep our fingers crossed that in 2021 everybody comes out, 2-day event, and we have a great time, as we always do. But if someone wants to know about where to get tickets and how much they cost, where do they need to go?
Yes, Hagley Craft Fair tickets are $5 for adults and children 5 and over. Free for Hagley members. Everyone does need to reserve a time ticket. No tickets will be available at the door, and you can find more information at hagley.org/craft.
And that would include a possible rain date? Because I know the weather these days, we never know what's going to happen.
Yes, the rain date will be the following day, Sunday, October 18th.
Excellent. Laura, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this event with us.
All right, you're welcome.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Grant Barons, and as you can hear from my accent, I am a newcomer to the county, and 302 is my only source of information.
Welcome back. We're at Hagley talking about the Hagley Craft Fair, and I'm joined now by George Newberger. Now, George, you have learned to combine two things that you love into one amazing item. Talk to me a little bit about, first of all, the fishing rods. You started with fishing rods and then you moved on to pens, right? How did that happen?
That's correct. Well, I started making fishing rods in 1975, And over the years, I wanted to do something different. So I wanted to learn how to make epoxy or acrylic handles in the fishing rods. And going out and researching it, I found out it's the same way that you make a pen. So I went off for 2 years and learned how to make pens, and came back and finally built an acrylic handle for a fishing rod. To go full circle, what I wanted to do next was, how could I introduce the skills from fishing rods into pens? So what I decided to do is I actually weave thread onto the pens, and I sell them as limited edition. There's only 3 sets of each design that I'll make and sell.
So you go back and forth between doing pens and fishing rods. Now, how many fishing rods and how long typically does it take to make a fishing rod?
This one I actually timed myself on, and it was 33 hours underneath a magnifying glass. Normally for custom, you don't need the bling, but there is a 2-page data sheet you fill out, so you're actually fitted for the rod, and the rod is made to complement your tackle, meaning what reel you're going to use, what pound test line, etc., because the guide spacing will change on the rods. So you don't need the fancy thread work for a true custom rod. I have rods from 1975 that are still in use today.
Amazing. So if someone has a fisherman in their life and they came to the craft fair for a Christmas present, this can be used for what kind of fishing?
This is a 3-piece trout rod. It's made, they're all numbered, but I think this is for 4 to 6 pound test line. So it is an ultralight trout rod. I also have what I call a budget rod, where it's the same components but without the fancy thread work to save the money to the customer.
So if somebody has to know how much they need to bring if they want to buy a fishing rod, I mean, what do they run?
My price point for the budget starts at about $75. Something like this, you're going to be spending several hundred just for the labor that went into it.
So something for everyone. Now let's move on to the pens. Now this is where you really get fancy. Talk to me a little bit about the wide range of materials that you've learned to incorporate into these pens.
Well, some of the material I use that most woodworkers use are wood, but what we end up doing is we'll dye our own burl wood. So we'll buy slabs of wood and dry it out, and then we'll submerge the slabs into an epoxy, a dyed epoxy. This goes under a vacuum, and under vacuum, it'll release bubbles. It might take 2 weeks to get rid of all the bubbles. When the bubbles are done, you release the vacuum, and now the wood wants to suck in the dyed epoxy. But because it's thicker than air, you double the time. So this might have to soak for up to 4 weeks to get a single piece of wood. The epoxy doesn't cure with time. It cures with heat. So after you're done soaking it, it has to go in an oven, and you can see burn marks here. After it's done curing, you can turn and polish it, and that's what you end up with. The dye takes differently from the density in the burl wood, and that's what adds to the beauty of the wood.
So then you have to trim it down.
From this piece of wood, we'll take it over to a lathe. We'll use chisels to give it a rough shape, and then this will get polished to 800 grit sandpaper. On the acrylic, you follow the same process on a lathe, but these get polished to 12,000 grit, and then a final polish is applied to it. So that lets us do different things. What we do also is a photo pen. So we can actually take a picture of your pet and incorporate it in epoxy and turn it on a mold. So we can personalize however you'd like to present a gift. We can engrave names in wood, okay, on pens. We can do business logos. So we can truly produce one-of-a-kind items for you.
So if somebody has a writer in their life, they can come and maybe give you a picture of the writer's dog or cat. How long typically does it take, and should people get their orders in now for Christmas?
On average, for a photo pen, it's quite involved because the photo is changed and duplicated, where a customer might send in a photo, and what we do is we touch it up the photo to remove the background. From that we make a decal, and the decal is applied to a brass tube and soaked in epoxy. So this is out of a mold, and this has to be turned yet. So just like I explained on the wood, this would be turned and with a lathe, and then sandpaper to 800 grit, and then wet sanded to 12,000 grit. So acrylic does require a lot more hand finishing than wood.
Tell me about the snake skin, the rattlesnake pens.
The rattlesnake skin is made in a similar fashion to the photo pen. There is a brass tube, would be painted with a white epoxy. Once the epoxy dries, the rattlesnake skin is tanned and then glued to the brass tube. The brass tube will then be cut to size, and it'll go into a mold and cast with clear epoxy similar to the photo pen. And then it's turned, sanded, and polished. So for a pen like this, not counting drying time of all your epoxies, you're going to spend about 2-3 hours per pen.
Now the question I have for you is, did you catch that rattlesnake?
No, I didn't. I have someone that ships it to me, or I'll buy out of country. This is a western diamondback rattlesnake, but you can get python snakes, etc., whatever your heart desires.
So George, if someone wants to know more about your pens or your fishing rods, where can they go?
I have a website. It is www.gnewberger.com, and you can also reach me on Facebook under Works of Art.
Well, George, thank you so much for joining us, and have a good time at the craft fair.
Thank you much.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Kathy Andrzejewski. I am so excited to be a part of the 302 today.
Welcome back. We're talking about the Hagley Craft Fair, and I'm joined by Sue Ann Cox, who is the fairy potter. Now, I don't really know how to describe this except it's magical and just really gorgeous.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for that lovely compliment.
So talk to me a little bit about the inspiration for, the cottages, the fairy cottages.
So the fairy cottages are based on traditional fairy lore that was kind of took hold in the late 1800s. And the designs are based on this book, The Language of Flowers. Now, every flower has an intention and a meaning. So say, for example, a sunflower means joy, and a hydrangea means grace, and a lavender means enchantment. So not only do you get a piece that is a hand-built ceramic porcelain piece, you also get a meaning, so when you give it to somebody as a gift, you have that intention and that meaning to pass along to them.
So it's kind of a throwback to the Victorian age, where if you wanted to show someone that you cared for them, or express sympathy, or give them encouragement, you would pick a flower based on that sentiment. So that's basically what this is?
Yes, it is. So I am a previous florist, so this was a national progression for developing this as my new art form.
Now there are a lot of different themes here. I'm seeing a lot of different flowers, and you mentioned the different intentions, but you also have butterflies, and you have a little hummingbird over here. So talk to me a little bit about, incorporating all of this symbolism and what it means for the pieces.
So for example, I'm displaying here 3 different seasonal pieces, okay? So it represents 3 different seasons. So first we have the harvest season, and this is the sunflowers and the asters, and the pumpkins, the white pumpkins, and the different bounty harvest, and this is our joy piece. Our pumpkins are our #1 seller year-round, believe it or not, And this too is indicative of the sunflower, meaning joy. Now all the pieces come lit. They come with a string of fairy lights. They come with a card explaining the meaning behind each piece. Now as we go along, we have the garden and the wildflower. And these pieces also have the sunflowers and pansies and a lot of different hydrangeas, flowers that you would find in a summer garden. Then over here we have our collection, which is our our holiday collection. So people actually take these and create villages underneath their Christmas tree with our pieces as well, which is nice. And they all light up, so they're really pretty, and people put them on their mantles.
Now, I was going to say, you probably have people that follow your work over the years, right?
We do. We have collectors of the Fairy Potter, and I call them my super fans, and I am just so blessed to have people that are so supportive and who love and collect my pieces as well. Another thing about my pieces, because they are fired twice at up to 2,300 degrees, they're good for indoors or outdoors. So I have customers that create entire gardens outside of my pieces as well.
That's amazing. So whenever you talk about the different types of fairy cottages or the pumpkins, how would you display one of these things? I mean, do you have to plug them in, or?
So the fairy lights are here. They feed through the back or underneath, and they just turn on and off, and they're battery operated. You can also get a string of plug-in lights. Mm-hmm. We also have little votive lights. They do take a votive, so flame votive. Mm-hmm. So you can also light a flame as well in those.
Okay. So you can also use them. You mentioned people putting them in their gardens, but this might be something for a centerpiece for the holidays, perhaps?
Yes, so I have here a couple different ways you can display these. This is a really pretty cake plate that you just kind of lift up, put a wreath around, do a little display. You can put some of the little pumpkins with it. This is a garden box that is really cute for a centerpiece that you can put either a pumpkin there or put the house there. These are our trolls. Our little trolls are very, very popular. And here's our troll Christmas gentleman here. He's pretty awesome.
Now, each one of these, they have an intention, you said. Talk to me a little bit, when you're putting them together, I mean, what are you thinking? How are you going about this in your process?
So I become inspired by nature, and I have always said when people ask me, and quite frankly, this is how I see it, that the fairies and trolls in my garden tell me what to build. So I get cues and inspiration from nature, so that's how it goes. And I don't know, quite frankly, when I go into my studio, which is in my home, what's going to come out that day.
Sure. So if the fairies and trolls in my garden want, do you take special requests?
I do take special requests.
Absolutely.
Hey. I do take special requests. Absolutely. We were very, very fortunate. We have a daughter who lives in New Zealand, and we went there last year, and we were able to tour the Hobbiton movie set. So it was kind of my pilgrimage, my fairy pilgrimage, and I got a lot of inspiration there as well. That's where my troll inspiration came from.
So let's go ahead and step away so you can show me how you put the houses together.
So we start with clay. This is wet clay. This is a white clay, and it comes in 50-pound boxes. So we get delivery on that about 2 to 3 times a month because we do have a high production. We take the clay. A lot of people see pottery as the sitting down at the wheel. There's another technique, and it's called hand building. So it's kind of like a sculpting process, and it starts out with a slab. So we take this piece, and we roll it out. This is kind of a very old-fashioned, it's kind of like rolling out dough, right? So we do that. And then we have all these different forms. When I first started, everything was hand etched, but because of our production value and the quantity of production we do, we have moved to imprints. And we imprint through this, and this is a style I've developed and a process I have developed over the last 4 years. Okay. So we imprint things, and then we cut out pieces, and we use molds, and then we do also some hand carving.
And you have a number of glazes that you use to get the different colors.
Exactly. So what happens is that after I've built, it comes out like this. This is a piece that was completely built. This goes into the kiln. It comes out of the kiln after about 10 hours at about 1800 degrees, and this is bisque. So bisque means it is glass, okay? It's not falling apart. And from there, we take our glazes. We use some manufactured glazes, we also mix glazes, and instead of a dipping process, which is used in most wheel pottery, and that's called functional pottery, we do brushing. I like doing the brushing because it's very, very specific. You can get to the places, you can do your colors.
Very nice. Now, if somebody sees this and they're like, I'm going to go to the craft fair and I want to buy one, what is the price range for your cottages?
So my cottages start at $35 for the Gnome Home Basic, and from there it can go up all the way up to the Rockford Tower, which is $125. Any kind of special orders if they want to do it, if they want to have it personalized, if they want us to do and create their house for them, so they can have like a replica of their home, that obviously goes a little bit more.
So if someone wants to find out more, is there a website they can reach you at?
Yes, we're www.thefairypotter.com. You can find me on Instagram on #thefairypotter. You can find me on Facebook, #thefairypotter. And I have a direct email, which is available there. We take all credit cards. We're all set up for that. Everything comes boxed, so it's perfect for gift giving. And we do free local delivery as well.
Alrighty, Sue, thank you so much for
joining us.
Thank you for
having me. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
We'll be right back. Information on the craft fair and all of the great things happening at Hagley, you can visit hagley.org. That'll do it for this week's episode. We leave you now with some peaceful images of folks doing Tai Chi in the park. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. We'll see you on the 302.